you are struggling with rounding or you forget how to round or some of the rules around rounding, go ahead and watch through this video. You can complete these notes in your notebook. They'll just give you some of those reminders of things you might forget. So the first thing we need to know is our positions, like our number place values. So remember, the decimal point is what divides from our whole numbers and our decimal numbers, right? So right here, this is going to be our ones position. There is no ones, so this isn't ones. This goes right to our tenths, right? On this side of the decimal is where we're getting that TH. So our tenths, our hundredths, and our thousandths. Right, this one over here is just our regular old tens, right? Not with a TH, but our just tens position. So our rule for rounding is that if we are looking at a number that is 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, we're going to keep it the same. If we are looking at a 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, we are going to bump the number up. Now, one of the things to remember is that when we are rounding, we don't want to determine that by the position that we are rounding to. We look at the position after the number we are rounding to. So if this says that we want to round to the nearest tenths, right, the nearest tenth, so that's 1 after the decimal point, we want to look at the hundredths position. We want to look at the one after what we are rounding to. Okay, so when we're looking at this, we are going to look at our tenths position and then look at the one after it to determine if we keep it the same or if we bump it up. So the hundredths position is the 3. That's in our value list up here, which says we are going to keep it the same. So that means we are going to keep this at 6.2. Right, if we look at our next one, again, we're rounding to the nearest tenths. So here is our tenths position, but we want to look at the one after it. That's the one that determines it, not the actual number in the tenths, but the one in the hundredths. So our hundredths position is a 7. That's in our higher list, which tells us to bump it up. So we are going to bump this 4 up to a 5. So that will give us 9.5. Okay, if we look at our next one, 14.95. Again, we are going to round to the nearest tenths, so I'm finding the number in the tenths position, but I'm looking after it. That 5 is in the list that tells us to bump it up. So if I'm going to bump this up, I'm adding 1 to this 9, which makes it a 10, which means that then carries over here to the 15 as well. So that 9 becomes a 0, right? It really becomes a 10, right? That 1 gets bumped over into the column over. So this becomes a 15.0. If you wrote that as 15, you would get full points as well. Okay, so let's look at our next row. Now we are going to round to the nearest hundredths. So if we're going to round to the nearest hundredths, we need to find our hundredths position. Our hundredths position is going to be the second decimal point. So right here, and we want to look at the number after it. So that is a 7, which is in the list that tells us to bump it up. So this is going to become a 19.37, right? I am adding 1 to this 6. 6 plus 1 gives me that 7. I'm bumping it up 1. Again, in my next one, 7.452. I'm going to go to my hundredths position, which is 2 decimal points, and I'm going to look at the one after it. Okay, the one after it is a 2. That says to keep it the same. So that 5 stays the same. And then finally, in my last one, again, I'm going to my hundredths position, which is the 1, and I'm going to look at the one after it. That's a 9, so that tells me to bump it up. So this is going to get a +1, so we'll have 23.02.